Hey, hi, hello there. Welcome to the channel The Top Tales. In the today's episode, we are going to discuss about a very interesting topic, and it's a tragic topic, that is the Chernobyl nuclear accident that took place in 1986. So let's continue to the video without wasting any time. The Chernobyl accident in 1986 was the result of flawed reactor design that was operated with inadequately trained personnel. The resulting steam explosions and fires released at least 5% of the radioactive reactor core into the environment, with the deposition of radioactive minerals in many parts of Europe. Two Chernobyl power workers died due to the explosion on the night of the accident, and a further 28 people died within a few weeks as a result of acute radiation syndrome. The United Nations Scientific Committee on the Effects of Atomic Radiation has concluded that, apart from some 5,000 thyroid cancers resulting in 15 fatalities, there is no evidence of major public health impact attributable to radiation exposure 20 years after the accident. Some 350,000 people were evacuated as a result of the accident, but resettlement of the areas from which people were relocated is ongoing. On 24 February, Ukraine informed the International Atomic Energy Agency that Russian forces had taken control of all facilities at Chernobyl. On 9th March, the Chernobyl nuclear plant was disconnected from the electricity grid. The IAEA stated that it did not see a critical impact on safety as a result. The April 96 disaster at the Chernobyl nuclear plant in Ukraine was product of the flawed Soviet reactor design coupled with serious mistakes at the plant operators. It was a direct consequence of the Cold War isolation and resulting lack of any safety culture. 30 operators and firefighters died within 3 months after the catastrophe destroying the Chernobyl 4 reactor. Several more people died after that. One person passed right away, while another passed away from their injuries shortly after in the hospital. According to the reports, a second person passed away at the time from a coronary thrombosis. Acute radiation syndrome was initially identified in 237 individuals who were present at the site and involved in the cleanup. 134 further instances of ARS were later verified. 28 of these passed away within a few weeks of the accident as a result of ARS, always related to the radiation exposure. A large but undetermined portion of thyroid malignancies detected in patients following the disaster who were youngsters at the time and are likely to be caused by absorption of radioactive iodine phthalate-9. However, no on-off site had acute radiation effects. Large portions of Belarus, Ukraine, Russia and other countries were also to varying degrees poisoned. The Chernobyl power complex, which was composed of 4 RBMK-1000 nuclear reactors, was located about 20 km south of the Belarusian border and roughly 130 km north of the Kyiv, Ukraine. While Unit 3 and 4 of the same design were finished in 1983, Unit 1 and Unit 2 were built between 1970 and 1977. At the time of the incident, there were 2 further RBMK reactors being built at the location in order to provide cooling water for the reactors. A 22 square kilometer artificial lake was built southeast of the planet next to the river Pripyat, a tributary of the Dnieper. According to the reports, the region of Ukraine has low population density and woodlands resembling those in Belarus. These were 49,000 people living in the new city of Pripyat, which was located around 3 km from the reactor. About 15 km to the southeast of the complex is the old town of Chernobyl, which had a population of 12,500 people at the time of the catastrophe. There were between 1,15,000 and 1,35,000 people living within a 30 km radius of the power plant. Let's see what actually happened on the day of the incident. The Chernobyl disaster of 1986, the Chernobyl 4 reactor team started preparing for the test on April 25 before a scheduled shutdown to see how long turbines would continue to spin and operate the main circulating pumps in the event of primary electrical power supply loss. The power from the turbine depleted too quickly during the Chernobyl test the year prior, necessitating the testing of the new voltage regulator designs The attempted test was conducted early on April 26 after a series of operator actions, including the disabling of automatic shutdown safeguards. The reactor was in a very unstable state when the operator made the decision to shut it down. When the control rods were placed in the reactor, an unusual feature, their design resulted in a significant power surge. Fuel fragmentation, fast steam creation, and spike in pressure were all caused by the interaction of the extremely hot fuel with the cooling water. Due to the reactor's design features, even moderate damage to 3 or the 4 fuel assemblies might and did cause the reactor to be destroyed. Due to the overpressure, the reactor's 1000 T cover plate partially detached, rupturing the fuel channels and blocking all the control rods, which were only halfway down at the time. The emergency cooling circuit ruptured, causing intense steam generation to spread throughout the whole core, supplied by water pumped into the core, leading to a steam explosion and the release of fission products into the atmosphere. A second explosion occurred around 2 to 3 seconds later, spewing hot graphite and pieces from the fuel lines. Although there is considerable disagreement among the specialists over the nature of the second explosion, it is most likely the result of hydrogen being produced during zirconium steam reactions. The explosion resulted in the deaths of 2 workmen, the fuel and incandescent graphite, which together made up around a quarter of the estimated 1,200 tons that were ejected, ignited, and series of fires that were primary source of radiation released into the environment. Using the auxiliary feed water pumps, 200 to 300 tons of water per hour was first pumped into the intact half of the reactor. However, this was stopped after 6 hours due to the threat of the water flooding Unit 1 and 2. A total of 5,000 tons of boron, dolomite, sand, clay, and lead were dropped by helicopter onto the burning core between the 2nd and the 9th day following the accident, in an effort to put out the fire and reduce the discharge of radioactive particles. The State Committee on the Supervision of Safety in Industry and Nuclear Power examined factors other than operator behavior in its 1991 report on the accident's primary cause. While it was undoubtedly true that operators left their reactor in a dangerously unstable state, it was also stated that since no such operating policies or principles had been articulated, the operators had not actually broken any of them. Accidentally, neither the general reactivity characters of the RVMK, which made a low power operation vitally important for safety. After listening to so much of information to the Chernobyl, you may be curious to know what had happened to the Chernobyl in the today's day. So let's watch. On 24 February 2022, Russian forces took control of all the facilities of the Chernobyl nuclear plant. Control level of the gamma radiation dose rates in the Chernobyl exclusion zone were exceeded. The SNRIU said that the rise in radiation levels were likely due to disturbance of the top layer of the soil from the movement of a large number of heavy military machinery through the exclusion zone and increase of air pollution. It added, the condition of the Chernobyl nuclear facilities and other facilities is unchanged. Radiation readings from the site were assessed by the IAEA to be low and in line with near background levels. On 9 March at 11:22, the Chernobyl plant lost connection to the grid. The SNRIU said that backup diesel generators were running and had 48 hours of fuel. The IAEA stated that based on the great load of the spent fuel in the ISF-1 storage pool and the volume of cooling water in it contained, there were sufficient heat removal without electricity supply. It is said that it was no critical impact on safety as a result of the loss of power. So now that we know so much of information about the Chernobyl incidents, so let's listen to some of the interesting facts about it. You have to remember, 1986 was still during the Cold War. The Soviet Union did not tell the West that what was happening right and what it happened. In fact, it took them days to tell their own people to evacuate nearby places. After the explosion, the first Westerners to know were Swedish nuclear plant workers, whose sensors read high levels of radiation. Sweden sent out the first alert that something was happening. After the blast, the real killers came in the form of radioactive isotopes, transmitted by dust particles floating in the air and falling to the ground. Radioactive iodine is one of the most dangerous because it can quickly be accumulated in the thyroid gland, leading to the thyroid cancer and death. If you have enough natural iodine stored in your thyroid, then radioactive iodine won't accumulate. But people are starved of natural iodine, like those who live in the areas of iodine poor soils. They are particularly at risk. This is why relief efforts begin by giving iodine pills to people in affected areas, trying to prevent accumulation of the radioactive iodine in their bodies. Fortunately, iodine 131 has a half-life of only 8 days, so the threat does not pose a long-term problem. Probably the most serious threat in cesium-137 and strontium-90. They have half-lives of 30 and 28 years respectively. The real threat with those two is in their ingestion. Strontium-90 follows calcium chemistry, so that it is rapidly incorporated into the bones and teeth, particularly of the young children who have received milk from cows consuming contaminated forage. Cesium-137 parallels potassium chemistry, so it is readily taken into the blood and may be incorporated into the tissues of the people and animals. All of this causes serious health issues and death at various rates. The relatively long half-life of the bones, those isotopes still makes them a huge problem today. Only about half of the radioactive materials have decayed right now, hence an exclusion zone for safety. There are lots of people that live in Chernobyl at different times. The ghost town that you see in most pictures is the feeder city of Pripyat. In theory, nobody lives there anymore. However, the town of the Chernobyl, which is just over 10 km from the reactor, has residents that cycle in and out on regular intervals. If you already knew that radiation wasn't too bad in Chernobyl, you might think it's not bad. Truth to be told, there are some pretty hot spots. These hotspots are usually found in cracks in and around Pripyat where the radioactive particles accumulated. They are also in the areas of the Red Forest where a lot of main fallout happened and was buried. This is a relative statement, obviously. The radiation causes odd growths and birth defects in the animals there. We as humans won't stand for even 1% rate of abnormality in our own species.
If you liked our today's video, then please do like, share and subscribe, and don't forget to click on the bell button. And have a great day ahead.